There is a woman I want you to picture. She is sitting at a kitchen table at 11:30 at night, and the light above her is the only light on in the house because she turned the others off to save electricity. In front of her are 3 pieces of paper. One is a bill, one is a bank statement, one is a handwritten note she wrote to herself that says, simply, figure it out. She has been staring at those 3 pieces of paper for 2 hours, and she has not figured it out. She has done the math 7 different ways, and 7 different ways of math has come back to tell her the same thing. It is not enough. What she has is not enough for what she needs, and there is no clever rearrangement of numbers that is going to change that fact tonight. Maybe you have never sat at that exact table, but I suspect you have sat at one like it. Maybe it was not a kitchen table. Maybe it was a car in a parking lot, engine off, not ready to go inside yet. Maybe it was a bathroom floor. Maybe it was a doctor's waiting room with a clipboard in your hands, filling out forms and watching the clock and feeling a fear you did not know how to name. Maybe it was a Sunday morning when everyone around you seemed to have something together that you could not find, something settled and solid, and you smiled at the right moments and said the right things and drove home in silence, wondering if this was just how it was going to be now. We all have a table. We all have a moment or a season or a long stretch of years where what we need and what we have do not match up. And in those moments, the most dangerous thing we can do is make the math the final word. I want to tell you about a church. Not a famous one, not a large one, not one with resources and programs, and a building that holds thousands. I want to tell you about a small congregation in a city called Philippi, in a time when being a follower of Jesus was not a comfortable or safe identity to hold. These were people who knew what it meant to sacrifice for something they believed in. And when a man named Paul, a man who had given his entire life to proclaiming a message most of the world thought was foolish, was sitting in a Roman prison, uncertain of whether he would walk out alive, these people pulled what little they had and they sent it to him. They gave generously out of their own need, not out of their abundance, out of their need. They looked at their own not enough, and they sent part of it away. That is the context. That is who Paul is writing to when he puts down the words. And I need you to feel the weight of that, because it changes everything about how you hear what he says next. He says, "My God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus." He does not say this to people who have everything handled. He does not say this as a comfortable religious phrase dropped into a newsletter for people who are doing fine. He says it to people who gave when they could not afford to give, and who are now waiting to see if the God they serve would notice, would respond, would come through. He says it as a declaration. He says it as a promise with a name behind it. And the name is this: Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides. Now I want to slow down on the word all, because we have a habit of reading past it. We have a habit of mentally footnoting it, softening it, giving it exceptions. We hear all your needs and something else adds quietly. Well, the important ones, the spiritual ones, the ones that are appropriate to bring before God. We have been trained, sometimes by life and sometimes by religion, to sort our needs into categories. The ones that count and the ones that are somehow too small or too earthly or too embarrassing to bring to the throne of God. Physical needs, the rent, the medication, the car that keeps making a sound that you know means something expensive, the body that is tired and weighs sleep, does not fix. Emotional needs, the loneliness that sits in a room even when the room is full of people, the grief that does not follow the timeline everyone seems to expect from you, the wound that keeps reopening because the thing that caused it has not been resolved and you do not know how to resolve it. Financial needs. I will say it plainly, because too many people sit in church services feeling like their money problems are somehow less spiritual than other kinds of problems. God is not squeamish about your finances. He invented provision. He made a world that produces. He is not uncomfortable with the fact that you are a physical being who requires physical things. Relational needs, the marriage that is strained, the child who has gone distant, the friendship you miss, the community you cannot seem to find no matter how many rooms you walk into. Spiritual needs, the faith that has gone dry, the prayer that feels like it is bouncing off the ceiling, the sense that God has been quiet so long you're starting to wonder if he is even listening. All of it is on the table. All of it is addressed by this promise, not some of your needs, not the ones that seem sufficiently holy. All your needs, The full catalog of what it means to be a human being who requires things in order to live and breathe and flourish and become. And here's the measure. Not according to your bank account, not according to what the situation naturally seems capable of producing, according to the riches of His glory. Think about what that means. When you're trying to assess whether your need can be met, you are holding up against your own resources and finding it too large. But God holds it up against something else entirely. He holds your need up against the riches of His glory, which are not diminished by use, not depleted by the needs of others, not subject to recession or inflation or scarcity of any kind. The riches of His glory are not a fund that can run out. They are not an account that can be overdrawn. They are not a well that goes dry after enough people drink from it. There is a story in the book of Exodus that I want you to sit with for a moment. The Israelites have left Egypt. They are in the wilderness. And a wilderness is exactly what it sounds like. It is not a place of natural abundance. There is no harvest here. There are no storehouses. There is no agricultural system or supply chain or distribution network. There is just open land and sky and a people who left in a hurry and are now looking around wondering what exactly they're supposed to eat. And every morning, they wake up and there's food on the ground. Manna, something fine and white and sweet, covering the earth like frost. Enough for that day. Not more than enough. Not stockpiled into reserves. Not delivered in advance. Every single morning, fresh provision for that day. For 40 years. 40 years. Think about the number of mornings in 40 years. Think about how many times, over the course of 4 decades in the wilderness, a person could wake up and look at the ground and think, what if today is the day it does not come? What if yesterday was the last morning? And yet it came. Every morning it came. Faithful, consistent, inexhaustible. God was doing something intentional in that wilderness. He was not simply feeding them. He was teaching them something about the nature of dependence that comfort could never have taught them. In a land of plenty, it is easy to feel self-sufficient. In a land of plenty, you might go entire seasons without consciously needing anything from God, because the warehouses are full and the crops are growing and everything is functioning. But in the wilderness, every morning is an act of trust. Every morning you wake up and the need is right there in front of you, undeniable, and you bring it to God because there is nowhere else to bring it. And what God is showing them, what He shows them for 40 years of mornings, is that dependence on Him is not a deficit. It is not a flaw in the design. It is not a failure mode that they need to graduate out of. It is the design itself. The point, the relationship you need, and He provides. And in that space between your need and His provision, something sacred happens. Something gets built between you and God that cannot be built any other way. I know that is hard to hear when you are the one sitting at the table with the bills. I know that this is a divine design for relationships sounds thin when you're looking at numbers that do not add up and a deadline that is not moving. I am not asking you to feel peaceful about it before you are ready. I am asking you to hold on to the promise long enough to see what God does with it. Because here is something I want you to notice about the way God provides. He does not always provide in ways that were predictable. Sometimes He works through the natural course of events. A job offer, a raise, a conversation that leads to an opportunity, a connection that was there all along but you had not seen it. Sometimes provision looks ordinary from the outside. Sometimes you can trace the thread and find a logical explanation. But sometimes, and I need you to hold on to this because there are moments when only this will do, sometimes He provides in ways that have no natural explanation whatsoever. The check that arrives on the exact day before everything falls apart. Not the week before, not safely in advance with room to breathe, but the day before, because apparently God works with precision that defies coincidence. The phone call from someone who had no way of knowing what you were going through. The word spoken to you at the exact moment when you were about to make a decision out of fear that would have cost you everything. The door that opened in a wall where there was no door. Not because circumstances shifted favorably, but because a God who is not limited by circumstances decided it was time. He works within your circumstances, and He works in spite of them. And sometimes He works to demonstrate, specifically and unmistakably, that the provision was not from the circumstances. It was from Him, because He wants you to know where it came from. He wants you to know who you are dealing with. The God of the manna is not a different God than the God of this promise. He is the same God in every generation, in every wilderness, in every kitchen at 11:30 at night with the light on and the math not working. He has not changed. His name has not changed. Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides, is not a historical title for a God who used to provide. It is the active, present tense name of a God who is providing right now, in ways you can see and in ways you cannot yet see, according to riches that have not and will not run out. So let me ask you directly, what do you need today that you are not sure will be there? Not a vague general sense of need. I mean the specific thing, the specific amount, the specific relationship, the specific answer, the specific door, the specific strength to get through the specific thing you are facing this week, and not the week after, not in general, but now this one, the one that is keeping you up at night. Bring that need to the only one who made a promise about it, not a polished, spiritually sanitized version of a need. The real one, the raw one, the embarrassing one, the one you've been afraid to say out loud because it feels too small or too large or too complicated or too much. The God who made the promise is not waiting for you to figure out a way to deserve the provision. The church in Philippi had not earned it. They had given generously, yes, but generosity is not a currency that purchases God's attention. His attention was already on them. The promise is not a transaction. It is a declaration about who He is. He is the God who provides. That is His name. That is His nature. That is what He does because that is who He is. And that does not change based on your circumstances or your failures or the state of your bank account or the number of times you have doubted. The woman at the kitchen table eventually went to sleep. She did not figure out that night, and the morning did not immediately bring an answer, but she did something before she turned off that last light. She pushed those 3 pieces of paper to the side. She put her hands flat on the table, and she said out loud to no one visible in that room, "You said all my needs. I am going to need you to mean that." And He did. He always does. Not always when you expect it. Not always through the door you were watching. Not always in a way that removes the wilderness. Sometimes in a way that transforms your experience of it, that gives you manna in it, that turns the desert into a place where you learn things about the faithfulness of God that could not have been learned anywhere else. But He provides. He has always provided. And He is not finished. He is Jehovah Jireh, and He has not changed that name.